The research station orbiting Neptune had been quiet for 3 weeks. Too quiet, according to the reports that kept crossing Commander Jake Morrison's desk. Scientists didn't just go silent, especially not when they were working on classified projects that could change the course of human history. But here he was, reading the same message for the 5th time, the words refusing to make any more sense than they had the first time he'd seen them. Dr. Caroline Fisher had stopped answering communications. Her entire team of 47 researchers had gone dark. The automated systems were still functioning, still sending their regular status updates, but not a single human being had responded to any direct contact in 21 days. Earth Command wanted answers, and they wanted them now. Jake stood from his desk and walked to the viewport of his ship, the UHSS Pathfinder. Beyond the reinforced glass, the stars stretched out in every direction, cold and indifferent. He'd been in space for 12 years now, worked his way up from pilot to commander of his own vessel, and he'd seen plenty of strange things in that time. But disappearing scientists, that was new. "Commander, we're approaching Neptune Station," called out Lieutenant Danny Cooper from the helm. The young officer had good instincts, even if he sometimes lacked confidence. "ETA 15 minutes. Good. Run a full scan before we dock. I want to know if there's anything unusual about that station." The Pathfinder glided through the darkness, its engines barely a whisper in the vacuum of space. Neptune hung in the distance, a deep blue sphere that looked peaceful from this far away. The research station came into view slowly, a collection of interconnected modules that spun gently to create artificial gravity. Everything looked normal. The lights were on. The solar panels were tracking the distant sun. The docking bay doors were closed but functional. "Scanning now," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the science station. She was the best analyst Jake had ever worked with, capable of spotting anomalies that most people would miss entirely. "Life support is active. Atmosphere is normal. Power systems are running at standard levels. I'm detecting life signs inside, but they're clustered in one section of the station." "Which section?" "The quantum laboratory. All 47 people are in there, sir. And according to these readings, they haven't left that room in weeks." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. People didn't stay in one room for weeks, not unless something was very wrong. "Can you get a visual?" Amy worked her console for a moment, then shook her head. "The cameras in that section are offline, manually disabled, looks like. Everything else on the station is working fine, but someone shut down all surveillance in the quantum lab. Danny, take us in." "Standard docking procedures. Amy, keep scanning. I want to know if anything changes." Jake turned to his security chief, a solid man named Frank Miller who had served in 3 different conflicts before joining the space program. "Frank, get your team ready. Full gear. We're going in prepared for anything." The docking process took 10 minutes. The Pathfinder's airlocks aligned with the station's receiving port, and the connection sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Jake waited while Frank's security team checked the initial corridor, their weapons ready but not raised. When the all-clear signal came through, Jake stepped onto the station with Amy at his side. The corridor was empty and clean. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow, but that was standard for most research stations operating on minimal power. The air smelled recycled but not stale. Temperature was comfortable. Nothing seemed immediately wrong, which somehow made Jake more nervous than if alarms had been blaring. They moved through the station slowly, checking each section. The living quarters were abandoned but organized. Personal items were still in place. Beds were made. Everything looked like the crew had simply walked away in the middle of a normal day. The cafeteria had plates of food sitting on tables, 3 weeks old now and covered in mold. Whatever had happened, it had happened during a meal. "This is really strange," Amy whispered. She had her scanner out, constantly checking radiation levels and atmospheric composition. "There's no sign of violence, no indication of a disease outbreak, no toxic gases or system failures. Everyone just got up and walked to the quantum lab." They reached the laboratory door 15 minutes later. It was sealed but not locked. The control panel showed green, indicating that anyone with proper clearance could open it. Jake noticed his hand was shaking slightly as he reached for the panel. He pressed his palm against the scanner and waited. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the quantum laboratory was massive, easily the size of a small warehouse. Most of the space was taken up by equipment that Jake couldn't begin to understand. Particle accelerators formed rings around the perimeter. Cooling systems pumped liquid helium through exposed pipes. Computer banks lined the walls, their screens filled with scrolling data and complex mathematical formulas. And in the center of it all, standing in a perfect circle, were 47 people. Dr. Caroline Fisher was at the front of the group, her eyes closed, her face peaceful. She was a small woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The other researchers stood behind her in concentric circles, all of them facing the same direction, all of them perfectly still. None of them reacted to the opening door or the arrival of the security team. "Dr. Fisher," Jake called out. His voice echoed in the large space. "Doctor, can you hear me?" No response. Caroline didn't move, didn't open her eyes, didn't acknowledge his presence in any way. Jake took a step forward and Frank immediately grabbed his arm. "Sir, we don't know what's wrong with them. Could be some kind of trance or contamination." "Amy, scan them. Tell me what we're dealing with." Amy moved forward carefully, her scanner extended. She circled the group slowly, checking readings and frowning at her device. After 2 minutes, she looked up with confusion written across her face. "Commander, according to this, they're fine. Healthy heart rates, normal brain activity, no toxins in their systems. They're just standing there, but there's something else." She adjusted her scanner settings and moved closer to Caroline. "There's an energy field around them. It's faint, barely detectable, but it's there, some kind of quantum field effect. Can we break it, wake them up?" "I don't know, sir. I've never seen anything like this before." Jake stepped forward, reaching out to touch Caroline's shoulder. The moment his hand made contact, everything changed. The world seemed to flicker. For just a fraction of a second, Jake existed in two places at once. He was standing in the laboratory touching Caroline's shoulder, but he was also standing 3 feet to the left, and also standing 5 feet to the right, and also still standing in the doorway. Every possible position he could have taken occupied the same moment of time, all of them equally real, all of them happening simultaneously. Then reality snapped back, and Jake stumbled backward with a gasp. Caroline's eyes opened slowly, focusing on him with an expression of profound peace. "Commander Morrison," she said, her voice calm and measured. "You came. We knew you would. We saw all the possibilities, and in most of them you arrived today." "Doctor, what happened here? What did you do?" Caroline smiled, and one by one the other researchers began to open their eyes. They moved in perfect synchronization, turning to face Jake and his team. There was something unsettling about the way they moved, like they were all connected to the same invisible puppeteer. "We succeeded," Caroline said simply. "We created a stable quantum field at the macroscopic level. Do you understand what that means, Commander? For the first time in human history, we've managed to keep matter in a superposition state without collapsing the wave function through observation." Amy stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "That's impossible. The moment you observe a quantum system, it collapses into a single state. That's fundamental physics." "It was fundamental physics," one of the other researchers said. Jake recognized him as Dr. Vincent Shaw, a quantum theorist who had published several groundbreaking papers before joining Caroline's team. "But we found a way around it. We created a field that stabilizes the superposition, prevents the collapse, and we tested it on ourselves." "You experimented on yourselves?" Frank's voice carried a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Are you insane?" "We're not insane," Caroline said patiently. "We're enlightened. Commander, for 3 weeks we've existed in every possible state simultaneously. We've experienced every potential outcome of every decision. We've seen futures that haven't happened yet and pasts that could have been different. We've transcended the normal limitations of causality." Jake felt his throat go dry. "Doctor, with all due respect, you sound like you've lost your mind." "Do I? Let me prove it to you." Caroline reached out and pressed a button on a nearby console. The air in the center of the laboratory began to shimmer. A sphere of light appeared, growing larger, and inside it Jake could see something impossible. The sphere showed the Pathfinder, his ship, but not as it was now. He could see versions of it docked at different ports, damaged in battles that hadn't happened, upgraded with technologies that didn't exist yet. All of these possibilities existed inside the sphere at the same time, layered over each other like translucent images. "This is what we've created," Caroline explained. "A quantum lock. When we apply this field to matter, it exists in superposition. It's here and not here. It's damaged and undamaged. It's present and absent. And most importantly, it cannot be forced into a single state by outside observation." Amy was staring at the sphere with wide eyes. "The military applications of this would be incredible. A ship that exists in superposition would be impossible to hit. Weapons would pass right through it because it's not really there, or it's there but also somewhere else." "Exactly," Vincent said. "We realized this 3 days into our research. We tried to contact Earth Command, but they wouldn't listen. They said we were making impossible claims, so we decided to prove it. By standing in a circle for 3 weeks. By existing in a stable superposition field for 3 weeks, Caroline corrected. "Commander, during this time we've experienced subjective centuries. We've thought through every possible implication of this technology. We've seen how it could be used, how it could be abused, and what it means for humanity's place in the galaxy." Jake exchanged glances with Frank and Amy. This was way beyond his clearance level, beyond anything he'd been trained to handle. But he also knew that Caroline was right about the military applications. If this technology worked the way she claimed, it would revolutionize warfare. It would revolutionize everything. "I need to report this to Earth Command," Jake said finally. "Doctor, I'm going to ask you and your team to come back to the Pathfinder with us. We need to debrief you properly and verify these claims." "Of course, but Commander, there's something you need to understand first." Caroline's expression turned serious. "We've seen the future. Not all of it, not with perfect clarity, but enough. Humanity is going to need this technology very soon. There are species out there, powerful species, who view us as primitives. They're watching us right now, waiting to see if we're worth conquering or if we're too much trouble. You're talking about first contact. I'm talking about war. The Krell Dominion has had us under observation for 6 months. They're deciding whether to invite us into their empire or wipe us out. And based on our current technology, we wouldn't stand a chance against them. But with quantum-locked ships," Caroline smiled grimly. "With ships that can't be hit, that exist in superposition, that violate every rule the Krell understand about warfare, we'd have a fighting chance." Jake wanted to dismiss this as paranoia, as the ramblings of scientists who had spent too long in an altered state, but something in Caroline's eyes stopped him. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't speculating. She spoke with the certainty of someone who had seen multiple timelines and knew which one was most likely. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. 3 months, maybe 4 if we're lucky. The Krell are cautious, thorough. They're studying us, learning our weaknesses. When they're ready, they'll strike without warning. Every military installation, every populated planet, every ship in space. They'll try to end humanity in a single coordinated assault." The quantum sphere flickered and changed. Now it showed Earth, his home, and he could see it in multiple states. In some versions it was green and peaceful. In others it was burning, continents scarred by weapons fire from orbit. In the worst versions it was nothing but debris, shattered into pieces by forces he couldn't comprehend. "Jesus," Frank breathed. "Is that what happens if we lose?" "That's one possibility," Vincent said. "But it's not the only one. We've also seen timelines where humanity survives, where we become a major power in the galaxy, where our quantum technology becomes the foundation for a new era of human expansion and exploration. The future isn't fixed, Commander, it's quantum. It exists in superposition until we collapse it through our choices." Jake made his decision. "Amy, start downloading all of their research, everything they have on the quantum lock. Frank, help Dr. Fisher and her team gather their essential equipment. We're leaving in 1 hour." "Where are we going?" Caroline asked. "Earth Command. They need to see this for themselves. And if you're right about the Krell, we need to start building quantum-locked ships immediately." The trip back to Earth took 4 days. During that time, Jake watched as Caroline's team demonstrated their technology repeatedly. They put small objects into superposition, made them impossible to interact with normally, then collapsed the field to return them to normal space. They showed him the mathematics, explained the principles, and answered every question Jake could think of and many he couldn't. By the time they reached Earth, Jake was convinced. This wasn't a hoax or a delusion. Caroline and her team had genuinely broken through one of physics' fundamental barriers. They had weaponized uncertainty itself. Earth Command was skeptical at first. Admirals and generals who had spent their careers thinking in terms of conventional warfare struggled to grasp the implications of quantum superposition. But when Caroline demonstrated the technology on a test vehicle, making a 10-ton shuttle phase out of reality and become immune to every weapon they fired at it, the skepticism evaporated. Within a week, the quantum program received unlimited funding. Within 2 weeks, construction began on the first military vessel designed to utilize quantum lock technology. The ship was designated USS Defender, and its sole purpose was to test whether the quantum field could be maintained on something as large as a warship. Jake was assigned as the test pilot. He'd brought Caroline back to Earth, so Command figured he was already read into the program and familiar with the principles. Besides, he was a good pilot with steady nerves, and they were going to need both for what came next. The Defender was smaller than a typical warship, more of a corvette than a cruiser, but it was packed with the latest quantum stabilizers, the most advanced field generators humanity could build. The entire ship was designed to enter and exit superposition on command, to exist in multiple states simultaneously while remaining stable enough for human crew. On the day of the first test flight, Jake sat in the captain's chair with a crew of 20 volunteers. Caroline was there too, monitoring the quantum systems from her station near the reactor. Through the viewport, he could see Earth hanging in the darkness, blue and beautiful and vulnerable. "All systems are ready," Caroline reported. "Quantum stabilizers are online. Field generators are charged. We're ready to attempt superposition on your command." Jake took a deep breath. "Engage quantum lock." The ship shuddered. Every light dimmed for a moment as power was diverted to the field generators. Jake felt the same sensation he'd experienced when touching Caroline on the research station, that strange feeling of existing in multiple places at once. But this time it was more intense, more profound. He could feel the ship spreading out across probability space, occupying every possible position within a certain radius. "Quantum lock achieved," Caroline announced, and there was triumph in her voice. "We're in stable superposition. The Defender currently exists in approximately 2,000 distinct positions simultaneously. Can we move? Try it." Jake engaged the thrusters and the ship responded normally, but according to the sensors, they were now moving along 2,000 different trajectories at once. It was disorienting and exhilarating at the same time. "Earth Command, this is the Defender. Quantum lock is stable. We're conducting maneuver tests now." The response came back immediately. "Confirmed, Defender. Be advised, our sensors are having trouble tracking you. You're appearing in multiple positions on our screens." "That's the point," Jake muttered. He pushed the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers, testing the controls and getting a feel for how superposition affected handling. Everything worked smoothly. The quantum lock didn't interfere with normal operations at all. "Commander, we have incoming," called out his tactical officer, a woman named Kelly Price. 3 drones approaching from Vector 9. They're armed with training weapons, but they're coming in hot. This was the real test. The drones had been programmed to attack the Defender using the same tactics that alien warships might employ. If the quantum lock worked as designed, those attacks would be completely ineffective. Jake watched on his screen as the drones closed in. They fired simulated missiles, electromagnetic pulses, even kinetic projectiles. Every single attack passed through the Defender without effect. The ship was there but also not there, occupying a quantum state that made it impossible to hit with conventional weapons. "It works," Kelly breathed. "Holy hell, it actually works. They can't touch us." "Now let's see if we can touch them." "Kelly, target the lead drone. Fire when ready." The Defender's weapons were specially modified. The projectiles they fired were quantum tagged, synchronized with the ship's field. They existed in superposition until the moment before impact, then collapsed into reality at precisely the right instant to strike their target. Kelly pressed the firing button. The railgun spat out a tungsten slug at tremendous velocity. The drone tried to dodge, but it didn't matter. The quantum-tagged projectile collapsed into reality less than a meter from the drone's hull, already traveling faster than the drone's sensors could track. The training drone exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. "Target destroyed," Kelly reported, her voice filled with awe. "Commander, this changes everything. We're untouchable, but they're not. This isn't just a defensive advantage, it's total superiority." Jake sat back in his chair, watching the remaining drones retreat after recognizing they couldn't win. Caroline was right. This technology would level the playing field against any alien species, no matter how advanced they were. Humanity had found a way to break the rules of warfare itself. But as the Defender returned to Earth orbit and Jake began writing his report, he couldn't shake a feeling of unease. They'd created something powerful, something that gave humanity a genuine advantage. But power always came with responsibility, and he wondered if humanity was ready for that burden. 3 months later, his concerns became irrelevant. The Krell arrived exactly when Caroline had predicted they would. 23 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their weapons primed and their intentions clear. They broadcast a simple message in broken English: surrender or die. Earth Command responded by launching the Quantum Fleet. In the month since the Defender's successful test, humanity had built 17 more quantum-locked ships. They were small, hastily constructed, and crewed by volunteers who understood they might be humanity's last hope. Jake commanded the lead ship, now designated UHSS Valiant after a rushed rechristening ceremony. His crew was experienced now, trained in quantum combat tactics that had been developed through intensive simulations. They knew how to fight while existing in sewer position. They knew how to use quantum-tagged weapons to strike enemies that thought themselves safe. As the Quantum Fleet accelerated toward the Krell Armada, Jake opened a channel to all ships. "This is Commander Morrison to all vessels. Remember your training, stay in quantum lock, trust the technology, and show these aliens why it's a bad idea to threaten humanity." The Krell ships opened fire first, unleashing devastating barrages that could have destroyed conventional vessels instantly. Plasma bolts, antimatter missiles, beam weapons that could slice through armor like butter. The void between the fleets lit up with enough destructive energy to sterilize a small moon. Every shot passed harmlessly through the quantum-locked human ships. On the Krell flagship, Warmaster Throck watched his tactical displays with growing confusion and anger. His weapons officer reported that all shots were achieving penetration, but no damage was being registered. The human ships appeared to be there, solid and real on sensors, but they were somehow immune to every weapon the Krell possessed. "What sorcery is this?" Throck demanded. "Fire again. Concentrate all weapons on the lead vessel." The Krell fleet focused their fire on the Valiant. Jake watched hundreds of deadly projectiles phase through his ship without effect, feeling the strange sensation of existing everywhere and nowhere at once. His crew remained calm, professional, waiting for his order. "All ships, return fire. Show them what quantum-tagged weapons can do." The human fleet opened fire with railguns, missiles, and beam weapons. Every projectile was quantum-tagged, existing in sewer position until the final moment before impact. The Krell shields, designed to stop conventional attacks, were utterly useless against weapons that didn't exist in normal space until they were already past the defensive barriers. 3 Krell ships exploded in the first volley. 5 more went dark as quantum-tagged missiles materialized inside their reactors. The remaining ships scattered, trying to escape an enemy they couldn't comprehend. "All ships, pursuit course," Jake ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The battle lasted less than an hour. By the end, 15 Krell ships were destroyed and the remaining 8 had retreated into hyperspace, broadcasting messages of confusion and defeat. Humanity's quantum fleet had suffered exactly 0 casualties. Jake sat in his command chair, watching the debris fields drift past his viewport. They'd won. Against overwhelming odds, against a species that had conquered dozens of star systems, humanity had achieved total victory, and they'd done it by refusing to play by the established rules. Caroline's voice came through on a private channel. "Commander, sensors are picking up transmissions from the retreating Krell ships. They're sending reports back to their empire about what happened here. What are they saying? That humanity possesses weapons that violate the laws of physics, that our ships cannot be destroyed by conventional means, that engaging us in combat is suicide. Caroline paused. Commander, I think we just became the galaxy's newest scary story. Every species that hears about this battle is going to think twice before threatening Earth. Jake looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities they represented. Humanity had crossed a threshold today. They'd proven that they weren't just another primitive species to be conquered. They were something new, something that broke the rules, something that made even the galaxy's apex predators think twice. And that was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Get me Earth Command, Jake said finally. Tell them the quantum lock works even better than we hoped. And tell them we're going to need more ships. A lot more ships. Because after today, the galaxy knows we exist. And they're going to have questions. As the Valiant turned toward home, Jake couldn't help but wonder what came next. They'd won the battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, other species were watching and learning and planning. But whatever challenges came next, humanity would face them with quantum-locked ships and the knowledge that they'd found a way to level the playing field. They'd taken the universe's own rules and bent them to their will. And that made all the difference. The message arrived on a frequency that humanity had never used before. It came through every communications array simultaneously, bypassing security protocols and encryption systems as if they didn't exist. When the translation software finally decoded it, the words were simple and direct. The Galactic Council wanted to talk. Captain Nicole Hayes read the message for the third time, sitting in her small office aboard the UHSS Guardian. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison and the Quantum Fleet had defeated the Krell Armada. 6 months of rapid expansion, building new ships, training new crews, and watching the stars nervously for signs of retaliation. But instead of another attack, they received an invitation. They want us to come to neutral space, she said aloud, looking across her desk at Lieutenant Peter Chen, her first officer. Sector 97 Alpha, that's 3 weeks away at maximum speed. Could be a trap, Peter offered. He was young but cautious, always considering the worst-case scenarios. We embarrassed the Krell pretty badly. Maybe they convinced their allies to help finish us off. Nicole shook her head slowly. I don't think so. The message includes authentication codes from 17 different species. The Krell, yes, but also the Vex Collective, the Thulian Empire, the Skoroth Hives, and a dozen others we've never even heard of. This isn't a war party, this is something else. What do? We go, and we bring enough firepower to make sure everyone stays polite. Nicole stood and walked to her viewport, looking out at Earth in the distance. Alert the fleet. I want 12 ships ready to leave in 48 hours. Full quantum capability, all weapons systems operational. We're going to meet the neighbors, and we're going to make sure they understand we're not pushovers. The journey to Sector 97 Alpha took 19 days. Nicole spent most of that time reviewing everything humanity knew about galactic politics, which wasn't much. The Krell had been the first hostile contact, but intelligence gathered from captured data suggested there were hundreds of species out there, each with their own territories and agendas and ancient grudges. On the morning of the 20th day, the Guardian and its escort ships dropped out of quantum drive at the coordinates specified in the message. What they found took Nicole's breath away. The station was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. It hung in the void between stars, a massive ring structure that rotated slowly to create artificial gravity. Docked at various ports around the station were ships from dozens of species, each one different in design and purpose. Some were sleek and elegant, others were brutal and utilitarian, and a few defied easy description. Scanning now, reported Lieutenant Sarah Brooks from the science station. I'm reading life support for over 40 different atmospheric compositions. This place is designed to host every kind of species imaginable. There are sections with methane environments, sections with high-pressure nitrogen, even sections that appear to be filled with liquid ammonia. How many ships? Nicole asked. 93 that I can count. Could be more hiding on the far side of the station. Wait, I'm getting a signal. They're assigning us a docking port. The Guardian maneuvered carefully through the crowded space around the station, aware that every ship they passed was probably watching them with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The human quantum fleet had become famous, or perhaps infamous, in the 6 months since the battle with the Krell. Stories had spread through the galaxy about ships that couldn't be hit, weapons that materialized inside hulls, and a species that had somehow learned to break the fundamental rules of reality. Nicole didn't like being famous. Fame meant attention, and attention meant danger. The docking process took an hour. When it was complete, Nicole assembled her team in the airlock. Besides Peter, she'd brought along Dr. Raymond Cole, a xenobiologist who specialized in first contact protocols, and Commander Linda Martinez, the Guardian's security chief. All of them wore formal uniforms and all of them carried sidearms, though Nicole hoped they wouldn't need them. "Remember," she said as they waited for the airlock to cycle, "we're here to listen and learn. Don't make promises we can't keep. Don't reveal information we want to keep secret. And for God's sake, don't start any fights." "What if they start the fight?" Linda asked. "Then we finish it, but let's hope it doesn't come to that." The airlock opened, revealing a corridor unlike anything Nicole had ever seen. The walls seemed to shift colors based on some pattern she couldn't understand. The gravity felt slightly wrong, like the station was rotating at a speed that didn't quite match human comfort zones. And the air smelled strange, carrying scents of ozone and something organic that she couldn't identify. A figure waited for them in the corridor. It stood about 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that rippled with bioluminescent patterns. Its face was vaguely humanoid but with too many eyes, each one focused independently on different members of Nicole's team. "Welcome, humans," the being said through a translation device that hung around what might have been its neck. "I am Coordinator Velk. I manage this facility and ensure peaceful interaction between species. Please follow me to the assembly chamber." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever, passing representatives from species Nicole couldn't begin to identify. Some ignored them. Others stared openly, their alien faces unreadable. A few backed away quickly, as if afraid that proximity to humans might somehow be dangerous. "They're scared of us," Peter whispered. "Good," Linda replied quietly. "Fear keeps people honest." The assembly chamber was circular and vast, with seating arranged in tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling. Each section of seating seemed designed for different species, with varying atmospheres separated by force fields. In the center of the chamber was a raised platform where speakers could address the entire assembly. Coordinator Velk led them to a section near the middle tier, gesturing to seats that had clearly been modified for human physiology. "Your delegation will speak from the central platform when called. Until then, please observe. The session will begin shortly." Nicole sat down, her team arranging themselves around her. From this vantage point, she could see the entire chamber filling up with representatives from across the galaxy. There were hundreds of beings here, maybe thousands, all gathering to discuss something important enough to bring ancient enemies together in one place. A deep tone echoed through the chamber, and all conversation ceased immediately. A figure emerged onto the central platform, and Nicole recognized it from intelligence briefings. This was War Master Throck of the Krell Dominion, the same commander who had led the attack on Earth 6 months ago. "We gather here today," Throck said, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, "to address a threat to galactic stability. The species known as humans have developed a technology that violates the fundamental laws of warfare. Their ships exist in a quantum state that makes them immune to conventional weapons. They can strike without being struck in return. This technology represents an existential threat to every species in this chamber." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Nicole kept her face carefully neutral, even though she wanted to stand up and defend humanity's actions. But she'd been briefed on council protocols. Speaking out of turn was a serious breach of etiquette. Throck continued, "The humans defeated a Krell battle fleet with 0 casualties on their side. Not a single ship damaged. Not a single life lost. They achieved total victory against a force that should have overwhelmed them completely. And now they are building more of these quantum ships. 17 at last count," possibly more. If they continue unchecked, they will achieve military superiority over the entire galaxy within a decade. Another figure rose to speak, this one a crystalline being that refracted light in painful ways. Nicole recognized it as a representative of the Lithros, a species known for their scientific achievements. The Lithros have analyzed the quantum technology employed by humans. Our calculations suggest that widespread use of quantum-locked ships could destabilize space-time itself. If more than 50 ships enter superposition in the same sector, the probability fields could cascade. Reality itself could fracture in that region. Nicole felt Dr. Raymond Cole stiffen beside her. "Is that true?" she whispered. "I don't know," Raymond admitted quietly. "We've never tested it with that many ships. We assumed the quantum fields would just overlap harmlessly, but if they're right about cascade effects..." A third speaker emerged, this one resembling a massive insect with translucent wings. The translation device identified it as representing the Vex Collective. The Vex propose immediate action. The human homeworld should be placed under quarantine. No quantum ships should be allowed to leave their system. The technology should be sealed, studied by a joint council of scientists, and potentially destroyed if deemed too dangerous. Now Nicole did stand up, unable to contain herself any longer. "And if we refuse?" Silence fell over the chamber. Thousands of alien eyes turned to focus on her. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure, but she kept her chin up and her voice steady. Coordinator Velk's voice came through the chamber's speakers. "The human delegation has not been recognized to speak. Please return to your seat. With respect, Coordinator, I think I should be allowed to respond to a proposal that basically amounts to imprisoning my entire species." Nicole stepped out into the aisle, making herself visible to the entire assembly. "You want to quarantine Earth? Based on what authority? We didn't ask to be part of your galactic community. We didn't attack anyone except in self-defense. The Krell came to our system with weapons primed and intentions clear. We defended ourselves. That's not a crime." Throck's mandibles clicked in what might have been anger or amusement. "You defended yourself with weapons that should not exist. You broke the rules that have governed warfare for 1,000,000 years. Maybe those rules needed to be broken," Nicole shot back. "You talk about fundamental laws of warfare like they're sacred, but they're not. They're just conventions that powerful species use to maintain their dominance over weaker ones. Well, we found a way to level the playing field, and you don't like it because it means you can't bully us anymore." Another being rose to speak, this one vaguely reptilian with scales that shifted through different colors. "The human speaks with passion but not wisdom. She does not understand galactic history. The conventions of warfare exist for a reason. They prevent conflicts from spiraling into total annihilation. If every species pursued weapons technology without limits, eventually someone would develop something that destroyed everything." "Like what you're accusing us of doing?" Nicole asked. "You say our quantum technology could destabilize reality. Fine, show me the proof. Show me your calculations. Let our scientists verify your claims. Because from where I'm standing, this sounds less like genuine concern and more like fear that humanity can now defend itself effectively." The chamber erupted in noise. Species were arguing with each other, translation devices struggling to keep up with dozens of simultaneous conversations. Some seemed to agree with Nicole, others were calling for immediate military action against Earth, and still others were proposing complicated diplomatic solutions that involved treaties and oversight committees. Coordinator Velk produced a sound that cut through the chaos, something between a bell and a shriek that made everyone fall silent. "This session is becoming unproductive. We will take a recess of 2 hours. During this time, representatives may engage in informal discussions. When we reconvene, we will hear formal proposals from all interested parties." Nicole returned to her seat as the chamber began to empty. Peter leaned over with concern written on his face. "Captain, that might have been too aggressive. We need these people on our side." "Do we?" Nicole asked. "Peter, look around this room. Every species here got to where they are through military strength or technological superiority or both. They're not going to help us out of kindness. They're going to do whatever serves their own interests. At least if they're scared of us, they'll think twice before trying something stupid. Or they'll band together to eliminate the threat, Linda pointed out. Captain, if even half the species in this chamber decided to attack Earth simultaneously, our quantum fleet wouldn't be enough. We'd be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Nicole knew Linda was right, but she also knew that showing weakness now would be fatal. The galaxy respected strength. It was a harsh truth, but humanity had learned it the hard way when the Krell attacked. During the recess, Nicole's team was approached by several delegations. Some were openly hostile, demanding that humanity surrender its quantum technology or face consequences. Others were more diplomatic, offering alliances and trade agreements in exchange for access to quantum research. A few seemed genuinely curious, asking questions about how humans had achieved what every other species considered impossible. The most interesting conversation came from an unexpected source. A small being, barely 3 feet tall with fur covering its entire body, approached Nicole with hesitant steps. The translation device identified it as a member of the Prill species, a group that Nicole had never heard of. "Captain Hayes," the being squeaked, "may I speak with you privately?" Nicole gestured to a quiet corner of the chamber. "What can I do for you?" "My name is Keeper Rix. I represent a species that has no military power, no advanced technology, nothing that makes us important to the great empires. We survive by being useful, by providing services that others find valuable. For 300 years, the Prill have served as archivists and historians for the Galactic Council." "That's interesting, but I'm not sure what it has to do with us." Rix's large eyes blinked slowly. "I have studied the records, Captain. Every species that joins the galactic community follows a pattern. They develop faster than light travel. They make contact with established powers. They negotiate treaties and trade agreements. They find their place in the existing hierarchy. But sometimes, very rarely, a species appears that doesn't follow the pattern. A species that refuses to accept the established order. Do you know what happens to those species?" Nicole felt a chill run down her spine. "What happens?" "They either reshape the galaxy or they are destroyed. There is no middle ground. The established powers cannot tolerate a species that threatens the status quo. But if that species is strong enough, clever enough, and lucky enough, they can force everyone else to adapt instead." Rix paused, his furry face impossible to read. "I believe humanity might be such a species, but you need to understand what you're really facing here." "I'm listening." "The species in this chamber are not scared of your quantum technology itself. They're scared of what it represents. For millions of years, the galaxy has operated under a simple principle: might makes right. The strongest species rule, the weaker species serve or die. Your quantum ships break that principle. They make military strength irrelevant. A single human corvette can defeat a Krell battleship 10 times its size. That's not just a tactical advantage. That's a complete inversion of the established order. So what are they going to do about it? They're going to try to contain you, not through direct military action, at least not immediately. Too risky with your quantum capabilities. Instead, they'll try to isolate you diplomatically. They'll paint humans as dangerous lunatics who threaten reality itself. They'll embargo your systems, refuse trade, and turn public opinion against you. Then, when you're isolated and desperate, they'll offer you a choice: join the hierarchy on their terms or be eliminated." Nicole processed this information slowly. "You're telling me this council session is basically political theater. They've already decided what they want to do." "Essentially, yes, but there's still a chance to change the outcome. If you can find allies, species who see an advantage in supporting humanity, you might be able to force a different result. The galaxy isn't monolithic, Captain. There are species here who resent the Krell's dominance, who chafe under the Vex's regulations, who dream of a galaxy where military might isn't the only path to power. Species like the Prill." Rix made a sound that might have been laughter. "We are too small, too weak to be useful allies in that way. But we can provide information, and information is its own kind of power. I can tell you which species might be sympathetic to your cause. I can warn you about which ones are actively plotting against you." In exchange, all I ask is that if humanity does reshape the galactic order, you remember who helped you when no one else would. Nicole made her decision quickly. Deal. Tell me everything you know. For the next hour, Rix provided a crash course in galactic politics. He identified 3 species that might be willing to support humanity. The Drayan, a race of traders who valued profit over ideology. The Korthal, a warrior culture that respected strength regardless of where it came from. And the Silicate communes, artificial intelligences who saw organic supremacy as an outdated concept. When the assembly reconvened, Nicole had a strategy. As soon as Coordinator Velk called for proposals, she requested permission to speak. This time, following proper protocols, her request was granted. Nicole walked to the central platform, very aware that she was about to make a speech that could determine humanity's future in the galaxy. She took a deep breath and began. Representatives of the Galactic Council, I've listened to your concerns about human quantum technology. I've heard the accusations that we're dangerous, reckless, and threatening to reality itself. Some of those accusations might even be fair. We are new to galactic politics. We don't fully understand all the implications of what we've created. But I want to address the real issue here, the one nobody wants to say out loud. She paused, letting the translation devices catch up. You're not scared of our technology. You're scared that you can't control us. For millions of years, this galaxy has been ruled by the principle that bigger guns win arguments. The Krell conquered 47 systems because they had better weapons. The Vex dominate through military might disguised as collective harmony. Every empire here was built on the backs of weaker species who couldn't defend themselves. Angry sounds erupted from several sections of the assembly, but Nicole pressed on. And now humanity shows up with a way to make your superior firepower irrelevant, and you don't know how to handle it. You can't conquer us because you can't hit our ships. You can't intimidate us because we've already proven we can defend ourselves. So instead, you want to quarantine us, study us, maybe eventually eliminate us as a threat. You're wrapping it in concerns about galactic stability and space-time integrity, but the truth is simpler. You're scared of competition. Warmaster Throck stood up in his section. The humans' words are inflammatory and ignore legitimate concerns about quantum cascade effects. Then let's address those concerns properly, Nicole replied. You say our quantum fields could destabilize reality if too many ships operate in the same sector. Fine. Let's establish safety protocols. Let's agree on maximum ship density in any given region. Let's create a joint research program to study the effects and develop safeguards. I'm not opposed to reasonable precautions, but I am opposed to demands that humanity disarm while everyone else keeps their weapons. A new voice spoke up, this one belonging to a representative of the Drayan that Keeper Rix had mentioned. The human makes a valid point. If quantum technology is truly dangerous, then the solution is proper regulation, not prohibition. The Drayan proposed the following. Humanity agrees to limit quantum-locked ships to specific numbers and locations. In exchange, the Council recognizes human sovereignty and grants full trading rights across all member systems. That started a new round of arguments. The Krell opposed any recognition of human authority. The Vex suggested that quantum technology should be shared with all species to prevent human monopoly. The Korthal representative simply stated that humanity had won the right to exist by defeating the Krell in combat, and that was the only argument that mattered in their culture. For 6 hours, the debate raged. Proposals were made and modified and rejected. Coalition formed and collapsed. Nicole found herself negotiating with species she'd never heard of, making compromises on issues she barely understood, all while trying to protect humanity's core interests. Finally, as the station's artificial sun began to dim to simulate night, Coordinator Velk called for a vote. The proposal on the table was complex, a web of agreements and restrictions that Nicole wasn't entirely happy with but could live with. Humanity would limit its quantum fleet to 100 ships. Those ships would be restricted from operating in certain sensitive regions. Human scientists would participate in a joint research program studying quantum effects. In exchange, Earth and its colonies would be recognized as a sovereign territory, granted full trading rights, and protected from unprovoked attacks by any council member. The vote took an hour. Species consulted with their home governments through faster-than-light communications. Coalitions huddled in corners, making last-minute deals. Nicole sat in her seat, watching the political machinery of the galaxy grind forward, and wondered if this was really a victory or just a different kind of trap. When the final tally was announced, the proposal passed by a narrow margin. Humanity was officially recognized as a member of the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Nicole should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt exhausted and vaguely uneasy. She'd achieved what she came here to do, secured Earth's position in the galaxy, and prevented a war that humanity might not have been able to win. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. That night, as Nicole sat alone in her quarters on the Guardian, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Keeper Rick standing in the corridor, his furry face as unreadable as ever. "Congratulations on your victory, Captain." "Was it a victory? I'm not so sure." "You're wiser than I expected. May I come in?" When Nicole nodded, Rix entered and perched on a chair that was far too large for him. "You're right to be uncertain. What happened today was a compromise, and compromises by definition satisfy no one completely. But you achieved something important. You bought humanity time. Time for what? Time to grow, time to build, time to figure out your place in this galaxy." Rix's large eyes studied her carefully. "The species in that chamber today still see humans as dangerous primitives who stumbled onto powerful technology by accident. They think they can manage you, contain you, eventually assimilate you into the existing power structure. But I've studied your history, Captain Hayes. I've read about your wars, your revolutions, your persistent refusal to accept the way things are when you don't like them. I don't think you're going to be contained. What do you think is going to happen?" "I think humanity is going to continue breaking rules. You'll find new ways to manipulate quantum mechanics. You'll discover technologies that make your current quantum lock look primitive. And most importantly, you'll inspire other species to question the established order. There are hundreds of races in this galaxy who are tired of being pushed around by the Krell and the Vex and the other great powers. They've been waiting for someone to prove that the old rules can be broken. You just did that." Nicole sat down heavily on her bunk. "So we're going to end up in another war eventually, just a bigger one. Perhaps, or perhaps you'll create something new. A different kind of galactic order, one based on principles other than military dominance. It's possible, Captain. Difficult, dangerous, unlikely, but possible." Rick stood and moved toward the door. "I came here to give you something, information that might be useful in the years ahead." He handed Nicole a data chip. "This contains everything the Prill archives have on the ancient species, the ones who came before the current galactic powers. They built wonders that we can barely understand today. But they also made mistakes, developed technologies they couldn't control, fought wars that scarred the galaxy. Their mistakes are your warnings, Captain. Learn from them. Why are you helping us? Because I believe in what humanity represents, even if you don't fully understand it yourselves. You're not just another empire trying to dominate the galaxy. You're something genuinely new, and the galaxy desperately needs something new." Rix opened the door, then paused. "One more thing, Captain. The vote today was close. If 5 species had changed their votes, the result would have been completely different. 3 of those species were bribed by the Krell to vote yes. 2 were threatened by the Vex to vote no, but that threat was countered by promises from the Draen. This wasn't democracy in action. This was just political manipulation. Then what was the point? The point is that you're now part of that system. You have a voice in the council. You have the ability to make your own deals, form your own alliances, pursue your own agenda. Use that wisely, Captain, because the next time there's a vote about humanity's fate, you'll need to make sure you have enough allies to protect your interests." After Rix left, Nicole sat alone for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. Earth Command would call this mission a success. They'd achieved recognition, prevented a war, and secured humanity's place in the galaxy. But Nicole understood what Keeper Rix had been trying to tell her. This wasn't the end of humanity's problems. It was just the beginning of a much more complicated game. She looked at the data chip Rix had given her, then carefully stored it in her safe. Tomorrow, she'd start the journey back to Earth. She'd deliver her report, participate in the inevitable round of debriefings and celebrations, and then get back to work training more crews for the quantum fleet. Because one thing was certain, the galaxy's scariest species might refuse to fight human quantum-locked ships now, but that didn't mean they'd stopped looking for ways to eliminate the threat humanity represented. They just switched tactics from military to political, and in some ways, that was far more dangerous. Nicole walked to her viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there on Earth, people were celebrating humanity's acceptance into the galactic community. They thought the hard part was over. They thought they'd won. Nicole knew better. The real challenge was just beginning. Humanity had broken the galaxy's rules and survived the immediate consequences. Now they had to figure out how to thrive in a universe that would never stop trying to put them back in their place. But if there was one thing humans were good at, it was defying expectations. They'd proven that when they developed quantum technology. They'd proven it again when they defeated the Krell. And they'd keep proving it day after day until the galaxy finally understood that humanity wasn't going away. The Guardian's engines hummed to life as the ship prepared for the journey home. Nicole returned to her command chair, ready to face whatever came next. She'd bought humanity time, just as Keeper Rix had said. Now it was up to her species to use that time wisely. Outside, the station continued its endless rotation, hosting representatives from across the galaxy as they argued and negotiated and plotted. The Galactic Council would meet again in 6 months to review the implementation of the new agreements. Nicole made a mental note to be there, to keep watching, to keep learning how this ancient political machine operated. Because the next time humanity needed something from the Galactic Council, she'd be better prepared. She'd know which species to approach, which favors to trade, which threats to take seriously, and which to ignore. She'd learned how to play the game. And maybe, just maybe, humanity would figure out how to change the rules entirely. Not through military force this time, but through something more subtle and more powerful. Through ideas. Through inspiration. Through showing the galaxy that there were other ways to organize civilization besides the brutal hierarchy that had existed for millions of years. It was an ambitious dream, maybe an impossible one, but Nicole had learned something important over the past few days. The galaxy was full of species who believed impossible things couldn't happen, right up until humanity made them happen anyway. The Guardian jumped to quantum drive, leaving the station behind and heading for home. In her quarters, Nicole finally allowed herself a small smile. They'd survived first contact with the galactic community. They'd established humanity as a force that couldn't be ignored. Now came the hard part, living up to the reputation they'd just created.